There we
Perfect. So, hi James, how are you doing today?
go. Great, great. How are you
Excellent.
doing?
I'm doing really, really good. Thank you. It's really great to finally put not just a face because I obviously seen your face many times before, but to actually speak with you in person and the way that we're obviously sharing it today. I've been obviously following your works for quite some time. You've been in a number of different of our showcases, and I think what you're doing is really, really incredible. Um, Even more so now that I know a little bit more about your background, and it's so diverse. But I really want to get into the kind of details of it and let our viewers know as well because it's really really interesting, kind of all the places that you've been, and of course the art that you create because there's so many levels of nature involved, but at the same
Yeah,
time so many different vibrant colors and everything like that. And then I've obviously realized that you're into the NFTs as well, which I think it's also excellent. So it's another topic that we can touch on today as well. And I think a
great,
lot of our
great.
viewers would be really interested to hear more about that also. So maybe to kick things off, if you can just kind of give everyone a bit of an intro about yourself, your background, and maybe a
Sure.
little bit of how you got started, how and when you got started into art.
Yeah. Well, um, I'm a artist and photographer based in Ireland now, but I grew up in the backwoods of Alaska, and I started photographing when I was about 13 years old. And so that means I've been photographing for 53, 54 years. And but I started out in the news business more as a journalist and a photojournalist, and I eventually moved up the ranks and became a reporter for the Associated Press, based out of Seattle, and kind of got into doing a lot of hard news and political reporting. But I'll tell you what, I got to the point where I didn't like the news business because I realized that whatever spin we put on a story shaped people's realities. It made the difference between them having a good day or a bad day, or being worried about the world falling apart, or not. If you bombard people with bad news all the time, they're going to think the world is bad, that everything's, horrible. So, um, when I got through that realization, I started doing more human interest stories. I did a lot of entertainment reporting, interviewing rock stars and actors and actresses and that sort of thing. But eventually, I moved out of that into establishing my own PR company. And I worked with some famous rock groups, helping them with publicity. And eventually ended up in Los Angeles, where I owned a big limousine company and still worked with a lot of actors and actresses. And then I kind of got to the point where I realized that, so many of those people were phony. Um, everyone was pretending to be something they weren't. So I sold that company and retired to the mountains of Oregon. And had a big house on 40 acres of land, and restored it. And it was going to be my big dream home for my father and I. My father lived with me. He was 86 at the time, and I was 35 or thereabouts. And 3 months after we moved in, it all burned in a forest fire.
Oh my
So
goodness.
all of my early
What?
work
Yeah,
burned. I had a large guest house where I kept a little office,
yeah,
and this was before digital, so
yeah.
unfortunately, I lost a whole lot. So anyway, um,
What year was
it
this? Just out of curiosity?
in 1992.
1992.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Were you born yet?
Yeah, but I was 5 years old, so that tells you more or less how old I am right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was 5 years
Yeah.
old, but early 90s
Yeah.
were early 90s were a little bit different for me because I lived in Colombia I
Oh,
grew up in Colombia during the drug times.
oh
So
my God.
obviously, I was still very young, so there's not a lot that there's. Well, I still remember a lot of it, to be fair, but
Okay.
obviously it was different. It's different when you're young, but it does play a big role in how you
Mhm.
grow up and how how you become later on in life. So I think that,
Absolutely.
for me, it was quite
Absolutely.
interesting, particularly seeing it after as well. Um, but yeah, I mean that's so yeah, I was about five then. So but yeah, go ahead. That's in unfortunate yet
Yeah.
interesting part.
But I have to tell you, there's, like you say, all of those experiences shape your view of the world and your life. And in my case, I mean, of course, I was devastated to lose so much of my personal history and my family history. But you know what? Something interesting happened. Um, as the years went by, I realized that when something like that happens in your life, it's never the end of anything. It's always the beginning of something new. And in my case, um, I mean, had that not happened, I would probably have a beard down to my ankles and be sitting in the mountain writing or something. But instead, so many wonderful things have happened since then that wouldn't have happened. I have a son down in Mexico who's the greatest guy in the world. He calls me his best friend, which is really, I think, the greatest compliment. And I, I wouldn't have him if I hadn't left
Yeah,
and gone to Mexico after this big fire. I
yeah,
wouldn't have ended up over here in Ireland. I probably wouldn't have really reconnected with my nature roots so much had that not happened. So, you know, yes, it was horrible. Yes, there are things that I miss. And yes, I'm grateful for all the wonderful things that have happened since then because, you know, it really to me is I mean, it's really profound that when one door closes, another one opens. It's punctuation in your life, and you get to choose what you're going to do with it.
absolutely.
And,
I think it's they say there's a saying that says that nothing has a meaning except for the meaning that you give it, right? And
oh, absolutely, absolutely,
unfortunately, though, when many of these things happen at the time, you don't think so much of the other side. It's not
yeah,
only until a little bit later on that you then realize, man, that it was actually good that it happened. But I think the more that you kind of start seeing these things occur in your life, the
yeah,
more that the quicker that you see it as getting back up or starting something new or diversion in life and stuff like that. Some of them are of course harder than others, but it's really interesting
that's for sure.
that you say that.
One of the things when I was going through the rubble of my home, um, I had a bunch of boxes that hadn't been unpacked yet. I'd only been living there for 3 months before it burned. And my mother had been into pottery and she died several years earlier. But I opened up this box that had burned, but it still had some pottery in it. And you wouldn't believe what was in this box. There was a little piece of pottery with a folded out book. And on the face of this, it said, and I'm telling you the truth, this really happened. It said, "Today is the first day of the rest of your life."
Wow, that is unbelievable.
Yeah, yeah,
You
I
still have
still
it?
have that piece.
Oh, oh,
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah,
Wow, yeah.
incredible.
It is incredible sometimes. Yeah, for sure. Wow. That's
Yeah,
interesting. So that was 1992. Then,
yeah, yeah.
okay, so that's until now, um, probably what, 30? 30 some years ago.
Yeah, 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 incredible. But after this fire, I rebuilt a home on this property. Uh, it was an underground house, really a cool design. And during this whole process, my father passed away, and I sort of lost my interest in staying at this property and developing it, so I sold it. Uh, I sold 40 acres of burned land
Yeah.
and the shell of this eco home into the side of the mountain for twice what I paid for the place originally.
Wow. That's
Anyway,
incredible.
I
Yeah.
basically retired then and took off to Mexico. I started sailing. I'd gotten into sailing a few years earlier, and uh, I ended up sailing in Mexico for about 10 years and, just forgetting about all the other things that had gone on in my life. And yeah, enjoyed being out on the water, out on, in situations where dolphins are swimming around the bow of your boat. And
Yeah.
off in the distance, you'd see schools of baby rays jumping out of the water and
Yeah.
slapping back down, and the
Wow.
occasional whale. It was quite amazing.
And this was in
But
Cabo mainly?
La Paz, north
La
of
Paz.
Cabo.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
It's a wonderful place. It's grown quite a bit since then. But yeah, yeah. So anyway, I enjoyed that for a while, and then I ended up back in the States because as I my some friends of mine had bought the former Royal Yacht of Monaco. It was 147-foot Campers and Nicholson's luxury yacht built in 1928. It
Yeah.
had been the gift from Aristotle Onassis to Prince Rainier and Princess Grace for their
Wow.
wedding
Yeah.
in 1906. Now, it wasn't anywhere near as luxurious. Um, at this point, it was going to be refit. It's now doing cruises in the Galapagos, but I represented the owners there and stayed on the boat and did that for about a year. And in the meantime, I had come to Ireland on a vacation briefly and loved it so much that I decided to go back again after this stint on the boat in Miami. And I loved it so much I just stayed. I yeah, I slept better here than I had in so long, and so much of it is because the nature here is just so incredibly, I mean, it's beautiful in a very spiritual way too. When you walk on the soil here and you see ruins that are 1,000 or 1,500 years old.
Yeah.
They're not like in the States where you'd see ruins that are maybe 100 years old
Yeah.
or 200 years old. I mean, the country has such depth. And my grandmother was from Ireland, so I was able to get my Irish citizenship very easily.
Wow.
And um, so when I got back here, I really um, started delving back into my original love, which was nature photography, and traveling around a lot, photographing the ruins and photographing the flowers and everything. And after a few years, I launched a book series called Mystical Moods of Ireland. It's up to 7 books now, and they're all photographic essays of the Irish countryside and different aspects of Ireland. And yeah, out of that, I started looking at different ways to photograph and to create art because, there's so many wonderful landscape photographers in the world. I'm glad to count some of them as good friends, but they're tremendous photographers. They're, and more are coming along every day. And of course, in the art world, as you know, you really need to be able to set yourself apart with a particular style or a different vibe And so I started looking for some ways to do that and to turn my work uh, more into fine art versus tourist postcards, you know. And in the midst of all of that, I started getting into the NFT communities and started showing more work online and
Was it mainly
eventually
photographic work, or did you already get into the painting side of things at that time prior to the NFT?
no, I've never been into painting. Everything I do is lens-based digital art. Um, so I'm painting with pixels, you might say. um, I like to take an image and I will work with it digitally, enhance colors, um, all to create the vibe and the mood that I want, and go from there. And I've gotten a lot of wonderful feedback. Of course, in the NFT world, back in late 2020, 2021, it was a great time to be selling art online, and I did quite well with that. And now, I'm not working so much on NFT work, although everything I do I make available as NFTs, but I'm more now into doing fine art limited editions of the work that I'm creating. So, um, yeah, that's kind of what I've been doing. In the midst of it all, I've exhibited work in a lot of different places in Bali, Beijing, New York, Las Vegas, Berlin, Dubai, um, soon to be in London with Plogix on the black car.
Yes, that's going to be
Yeah,
interesting.
so yeah,
We are very much
yeah.
looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's such a unique idea, and this is something I love about what you're doing is you're coming up with unique ways to get art in front of people, and the value of having um, a piece of artwork showing in Times Square and being able to have a photograph of it to use for promotion is incredible. I mean, it lends an awful lot of credibility. And what it also does is it creates that separation, that additional element in marketing um, that can set an artist apart from others. Um, One of the things I've been involved in a lot of marketing over the years with some of my own businesses and projects. And one thing that's quite notable to me is that artists are horrible at marketing themselves. I mean, there's there's the um, the factor that they don't have enough confidence in their work, when in fact it's unique. I mean, it's not better or worse than anybody else's work. And you just have to put it out there and reach the right audience. Um, but a lot of them are afraid to do that. Um, they're afraid to put themselves out there. And I think with what you're doing, you're giving people the confidence to put themselves out there.
Yeah,
And
I just want to say thank you first of all for the compliments. That obviously means a lot to us because we work, day in and day out in the back of these showcases to make sure obviously that everything is going to plan. And in terms of the art side of things, I totally agree with you and really resonates with a lot of what we are doing. A lot of artists are indeed bad at marketing, or they focus so much into the art side of things, which is what they're good at, right? Ultimately,
mhm,
that they
right.
fail to market themselves, which is obviously a great component of actually selling and getting the work out there. And that's where kind of we try to come in because I've always, and I see it every day. I mean, there's so much talent out there that goes unseen, unfortunately. Um,
Yeah.
and I think if we can be a catalyst, in helping not just art get out there, but,
Hmm.
also creating some memorable moments, like bringing it, as you say, obviously in Times Square or in cabs, in unique places that you don't often maybe see art.
Right.
It just not only, creates a memorable moment for the artist itself, it also markets the artist itself, and it also
Hmm.
creates a sense of recognition for those that are actually enthusiastic about art and maybe so-called happen to be walking during Times Square that day.
Sure.
So it's a
Yeah.
mix of many things, I think, and I think that I call it characterization of it is really on point. So
People have to look at it as planting seeds, and not all the seeds are going to grow. But you got to plant the seeds so that you have a crop at some point, right? And all of these different showcases, all of the different exhibitions, um, everything you do is a seed. And hopefully it'll all lead back to selling art. This is a wonderful time to be an artist. The internet has just revolutionized things. I mean, you know that in the old days, you'd have to get with a gallery, and it would really be subject to what an individual in the gallery, one individual thought of your work. And then if it did sell, they'd take a huge percentage of it. And now um, it's possible to turn the tables a bit and act as your own gallery. And with support from organizations like yours, it's possible to develop a worldwide following. And, it's a wonderful thing.
yeah, absolutely. It's different times. Obviously, in many ways, it's trickier. In other ways, it really depends on how you utilize the tools that are readily available to you, and how
Absolutely.
creative you can be, not just in the art world, but also in ways to get your art out there. And I
Hmm.
think it's definitely changing times. Some people adapt a little bit easier. Some people can be a little bit more challenging. Some people can be anti-AI, anti-NFT, maybe, for example, as you
Yeah.
can hear it, or they claim that, AI is just ruining art forever and things like that.
Oh, no.
But
It's
you could
making
have
it easier for people to sell if you use it as a tool.
exactly.
You know,
Yeah,
it, I don't get into using AI for creating art because to me that kind of art doesn't have a soul. When you're creating it yourself, you're really implanting part of yourself in that artwork. But if you're using the AI intelligently for your marketing, for sending out newsletters, for working on your website, for creating marketing materials, it's quite amazing what you can do. Um, you can do something that might have taken a week in a matter of an afternoon now, um,
Mm,
if you know what you're doing. So, that's exactly, like you said, using the tools that are available.
yeah, absolutely. There's a saying. It's quite interesting. Slightly off topic, but not really in a sense because it's also AI based. There's a
Sure.
saying that says everyone says that AI is taking everyone's jobs away, but only AI itself can save them. So it's quite controversial and ironic in and of its own, but it's actually in many ways, very much true. And it's a little bit the same way with the whole art scenario in the sense that, some people see it as a threat to art, but others see it at the same time as opportunities to obviously create something new and generate
Yeah.
a whole new niche out of it. So it's similar to saying how when abstract really gained explosiveness and everyone was
Yeah.
just calling it, not artistic or non-art or ruining the whole thing. And now we have so many abstract artists and, there's so many talks about saying how abstract really, makes you kind of go out of your limits in terms of
Yeah.
expressing things. So it just really depends on, obviously how you see it. Like we talked about in the beginning, right? It's all about the meaning. Um, but yeah, it's really,
Absolutely.
really
I
interesting.
to me
Yeah, go ahead.
to to me art is about creating a soul to soul connection with the viewer. One that gets past all of the filters that we have in our minds about what art should be or shouldn't be or any of that stuff. It's a soul to soul communication that is an emotional one, and it's all about creating an emotional response. Um, I like all the talk about, you know, high vibes and low vibes and that sort of thing. And as artists, we can do that. We can give somebody a higher vibe. We can increase their frequency. We can actually make them feel happy and peaceful through our art. And that's a real powerful thing. I think that a lot of people miss that, and it's we're creators, and that's what it's all about. The talk I was going to be giving in Budapest at the convention that's been now canceled was about how artists can change the world. And it's exactly through what I'm talking about. You know, art's being used for politics in the States. Art has been used for politics forever. It's been used for cultural movements, and art is another incredibly valuable and powerful communication mechanism for shaping society and shaping culture and for expressing popular opinions or unpopular opinions. But yeah, it's powerful.
Well, it's unfortunate that's been canceled. It's such an amazing topic. I think that now that you said it, I think a little bit of a light bulb went in my head. So we would be more than happy to maybe organize something like that in the near future within our community because I think it's obviously it's a great topic and it's
Yeah,
it's something that a lot of the artists that are part of our community and of course enthusiasts can learn more from and get also some inspiration as well. I
yeah.
think that that would be
Well,
great.
I
Um,
think it's just important. I'd actually thought about creating it as a TED Talk done by AI.
that would be very interesting. That's for sure. That's really,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, TED Talks, I get a lot out of some of them. Some of them can be a little bit on the other side, but I feel
Yeah.
like art is one that, that a lot of people undermine it in terms of the depth that you can go to when you're talking about art. All
Mhm.
the details involved, all the ways that it makes you feel, the symbolism, everything.
Mhm.
So I think
Mhm.
that at times it's a little bit undermined. And when obviously when you get the word out there, when you see different artworks, and when you actually get to know the artist a little bit more, similar to what we're doing obviously now,
Yeah.
it changes the whole
Story.
dynamic of how you view not just art in general, but also the art of the artist that you already know, right? So.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, Story is important. And I think, there are a lot of, for instance, there are a lot of artists and photographers who think, oh, I don't have to write anything. I don't have to put a title to this. I don't have to tell a story because my art will stand on its own. Well,
I hear that a lot, by the way. Even
that's
even so with the artists that I interview, believe it or not. You can probably
really,
see it. Yeah,
yeah,
you can see it on a lot of
mhm,
the interviews I've done previous.
yeah,
But yeah, I hear it a lot. I'll ask a lot of artists, and they'll say things like, so I say like, what kind of symbology or how does it make you feel? And they all,
mhm,
and it's a very nonchalant way. A lot of them just like it's really all about, I just do my thing. It's really at the end of the day. However they feel, that's great. If somebody feels great, if somebody, so it's a really interesting approach. Not all of them, not just very
well,
few of them, but there are several that have that approach, which is quite interesting.
well, story is one of the tools of marketing. It's a way for an artist to guide someone to the emotional experience that they intended in creating the art. Not everybody is able to grasp it straight off the bat, but when they have some context and know a little bit more about what's been going on, then a lot of times the light bulb will come on and they'll get it. So I think it's important to have that story. You know, one of the things that I didn't mention to you yet, back from my time in Seattle as a journalist, uh, I was robbed and shot.
Wow,
It was
that's
right after John Lennon was assassinated. It was about a week afterward, and I survived because my camera took the bullet.
oh my goodness. You have me a little bit blown away, James. Don't get me really. It's just like burnt house,
Yeah.
your background. Now you were robbed and shot, you know, PR, limo business, Mexico, Alaska,
Uh,
Ireland.
but look,
Really, it's
gray
really.
hair,
Uh,
old man.
Listen, I'm absolutely loving this, but at the same time blown away. So tell me, so you were
Yeah,
shot, and then what happened? I'm sure
yeah.
there's something more
Well,
interesting.
no, actually, this is probably about the real big one. But no, I was robbed and shot, and a bunch of street kids, and they took off. They wanted to steal my camera gear, and they couldn't get a camera case closed, and I was holding one of the cameras, and I was holding it like basically right over my heart, getting ready to put it into the case. And one of them shot with a little 22 handgun. And I mean, I was freaked out, but I knew I hadn't been hit. I didn't feel anything. And they took off with all my camera gear. When the police came, the police searched all around, couldn't find any bullets. And they called me about a week later and said, "We found your camera gear. These guys tried to pawn it." And they were all found and arrested. But they got the camera gear back to me. And one of the cameras, it was a Canon, by the way. I'm a Canon fan.
Yeah, now Canon saved your life, huh?
It had a bullet hole right at the viewfinder, and it had stopped at that one section of the camera. And of course, this was a film camera, and back when cameras were heavily built. But yeah, I felt that was, you know, you hear the stories about the preacher who has a Bible in his pocket and gets shot, and the Bible catches the bullet. Well, the camera was my savior there.
And you still keep the camera today, I suppose.
You know what? Oh, it was lost in one of my moves.
Oh no.
I've been agonizing over that because I would have had the thing bronzed, you
Yeah.
know.
But you know what?
Um,
Maybe sometimes it was meant to kind not that you would also be somehow in a weird way. Maybe it's great because you can tell the story, you can show it. But in a weird way,
yeah,
you always look at it and then you're thinking back about, exactly what happened. Sometimes it's a good idea to just put that
yeah,
out and just keep it, in the back of your head as a memory, right? So
yeah.
it's just uh, like you
It's a
said,
good
right? It's
story.
good to start fresh. Sometimes it's good to let things go. But that's unbelievable. Wow, it's
Yeah,
really
yeah,
interesting how many types of things that that have happened to you, and how many things that obviously that you've done. I think obviously your artwork is incredible. So
thank you.
I mean and it seems like you obviously love flowers a lot. It's I don't want to say you're a floral artist because you do have a lot of other stuff and a lot of nice landscape stuff and a lot of
Oh,
Irish looking scenery. And by the way,
yeah.
I've been to Ireland, but I've been to only Belfast and Dublin, and
Uh,
I
uh,
actually drove from Belfast to Dublin once to catch a flight last
mhm.
minute. And that's as scenery as I've gotten, which probably not the best and beyond because I've seen a lot more on TV. But it was still pretty magical. Just
Well,
it's incredible how green everything is, right?
you haven't seen Ireland yet.
Yeah, that's what I
It's,
thought.
just to give you an idea, in all of the years I've been here, this is my 18th year. Um, I've been to Dublin once for about 3 hours. The
Yeah.
rest of the time, I live in the
Uh,
west of Ireland,
okay.
in a very small village, and with the countryside all around me. Across the street are a bunch of cows, you know.
Yeah.
But I like being out in the countryside where the people are, you get to be around some of the nicest people. Um, they're just golden folks, the kind of people who my neighbor, if he doesn't see me for a few days, he'll pop over to make sure I'm here and okay, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Uh, you wouldn't find that in a lot of places.
So
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell my wife that we're going to Ireland for the next.
There you
You've
I'd
already
love to
told
show
me, and
you
I think
around.
change of plans, huh?
Love to show you around. A lot
Yeah.
of tourists go to some of the, big spots, and there are so many other places to go that are so beautiful. Um, I One thing I did in the last year is I launched a magazine called Awesome Ireland Magazine, and it's just a small magazine. Here's one of the first issues of it. It's all
Oh
about
wow. Yeah.
this one was about the castles here. It's a single theme magazine. Every issue is 20 pages, and there's no advertising. It's all um, my photography and historical text about some of these different places. And it's just a fun thing to do, and it shows off some of my favorite spots.
Do you link a lot to your writing with your artworks, for example, or with your photography and stuff? Y-
Um, I way more with toward my photography and artwork, but I always include several or multiple paragraphs of story to provide context. A lot of the places here have such a deep history that it's important to bring the history into the image as well. Um, I just maybe a mile away is the Shannon River here, and for thousands of years, it's been a main thoroughfare through the island, first by the Vikings and by monks and by marauding bands. So, you know, it's just to me, it's amazing to go and look out onto these waters, um, and to think that, 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, I might see a Viking ship out there on the water.
Yeah.
In fact, right near where I live is also where the first flying boats landed.
Wow.
Uh, the big Pan Am flying boats
Yeah.
from the late 1930s
Yeah.
when they landed here on their transcontinental flights, transatlantic flights. So, yeah, there's just so much history behind everything here.
That's
Uh,
awesome. Yeah.
I live
Well,
I live not far from my great grandparents' former farm, so every time I go over in that area, I feel like I'm coming home. I
yeah.
have a lot of photographs. A lot of my nature photographs are from that specific area, and it's just I don't know. It's a vibe, as they say.
Yeah, it's always a vibe. And out of
Yeah.
all of these different kind of photography, obviously you have the more of the scenery, the sunsets, you have some floral as well, you have the mountains. Is there any specific type that you enjoy capturing the most, or is it kind of a mix of everything?
Um, I love vibrant nature scenes with lots of bright flowers contrasting. A nice blue sky always helps. But I'm kind of in the process of separating my work into the typical touristy kind of photograph that someone who visits here might like to remember their trip here, and then the high-end fine art limited edition stuff, which is the stuff that I have displayed with you um, on Plogix and on my fine art gallery site. So my preference nowadays is more toward the fine art stuff because uh, I don't know, it's more intense to me. It's more guttural and raw and emotional. And it isn't just, a pretty picture of a castle. It's it's a landscape texture, um, perhaps that's next to rocks that have been shaped by the glaciers here 15,000 years ago, that kind of thing. Yeah.
That's really, and what do you enjoy most about the whole art side of thing, James? Like, is it more kind of your experience of actually going there and capturing it, or is it more also seeing afterwards what you've captured and being able to obviously tell the story behind it?
Well, it's a combination. A lot of times I'll be going through my archive. I've got hundreds of thousands of images, and every so often I'll go through the archive and I'll see something that I didn't see previously, or I'll see a part of a photograph that strikes me as an interesting abstract, or something that I can pull out and develop um, into a standalone piece. Um, so yeah, uh, going out, I do a lot of drone photography. I was a private pilot. I got my pilot's license as a kid in Alaska, and so I like getting aerial images. I
Wh-
don't
What
fly
what haven't you
airplanes
not done?
anymore,
Awesome.
but I haven't wrestled alligators,
Okay. So
but
you
I
do fly drones. You capture as well photography
yeah,
with drones.
yeah.
Cool.
I have kissed whales before, though.
Wow. I wouldn't doubt it though in Alaska, I suppose, right? Or Seattle area
Yeah, that
kind
was
of.
in Mexico.
Oh, okay, Mexico. Yeah. West coast of Mexico, you always see that, right?
Petting whales.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool. Awesome.
sure. But no, I like using the drone to get different images and to find different geometric shapes from above, because you know, you can use the drone to capture sweeping panoramas and things like that, but you can also use it to get those different lines and textures from above, in different lighting situations. So um, I have a series that I did on, it's called Abstract Atlantic Seascapes, and they're all drone images from the Irish coast, um, done over a really unique area that has geo geography that's and geology that's just incredible. I mean, the shapes of the rocks at the beach and um, the way the stones are carved by the waves coming in and out. And yeah, that collection's got about 12 pieces, 15 pieces.
How high
It's
do you
it's
actually capture these images? Or it depends.
Well, it really depends. Sometimes I'll be up to the legal limit, which is 120 meters here, and other times I might only be 10 or 15 feet off the ground. It really depends. But yeah,
Do you do a lot of
so
series as well? Or is it
I do a lot of series. Well, most of my series have been for NFT series. Um,
you still
my
have a view of getting back into the NFT or I guess deeply back into the NFT? And do you feel
oh,
that the technology is here to stay and that do you feel like that trend's going to come back and you would play a big role in
absolutely.
it?
I believe that we're very early right now with crypto and NFTs. I think we had our first big push back in 21, early 22. And then, of course, the crypto market crashed. And however, there are a lot of big collectors still focusing on NFT art. And in fact, some of them are doing a lot of collecting at some bargain basement prices because they know that art has always been a good storehouse for wealth. And as as the crypto industry um, regains, I mean, heck, with Bitcoin over 100,000 now,
Who
um,
would have thought, right?
yeah. Some
Yeah.
people are predicting it's going to be over a
3 million,
million in a
I
matter
heard.
of
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, that's one aspect of it. But the other aspect that's so important with NFTs, even if you don't list or sell NFTs, is if you can get your work on the blockchain and have a provenance established, you can take advantage of that down the road. Um, I mean, once it's minted on a blockchain, it's there. I mean, that's your digital signature. And there's never a question about whose art that is, and there's value in that. There was an interesting post on NFT Twitter yesterday, or NFT X, or whatever you want to call it now. But the artist had been clearing out his parents' art collection, and they had this one piece of art um, that was unsigned and had no information on it, but they knew it was from a famous artist. And they'd been offered like $15,000 for it or something. Now, he did some research and he got into some records and actually found a gallery catalog listing for this piece of art that established who the artist was and dated it. And the value on the piece doubled just from
Wow.
having that provenance.
Yeah.
And I think that that's going to be one of the keys here with NFTs. And the beauty of it now is that you can you can mint your entire archive for pennies
Yeah.
nowadays
Yeah. The
with all
gas
the
fees
new
are not like they were a couple of years ago.
oh, oh heck, I paid up to $200
Two more for
at
one.
one point to mint a piece.
Yeah.
Um, but now, geez, I pay my maybe 5 cents,
Yeah.
10 cents. So, you know, being able to get that established, I look at it as legacy work in that maybe in 50 years when I'm not around, my son will be able to do something with the art and it'll be established whose it was. You know what I mean?
Oh, I'm sure the
Um,
industry will change even before that. I would think.
oh,
Do you feel, James? Because I know that we talked about it previously in one of our conversations that
mhm.
maybe the collectible side of things kind of acted a little bit as a halt in terms of the whole NFT reputation. Do you feel
Yeah.
like it played a bit of a negative impact in the NFT reputation?
Well, I could never get my head around why somebody would pay $2 million for a pixelated, you know,
Ape?
um, yeah. I mean, come on. Although, there is a market for that, and I'm not going to criticize that. Somebody brilliantly came up with that. Um, but I think the in the long term, what will happen is the art will um, become more recognized. I think even galleries are going to be starting to depend more on digital identification and provenance and having things registered on the blockchain. Um, it's inevitable. And I think that that's going to change the ball game quite a bit. I think that it will go from being oh, isn't that a funny ape picture to, look at this astounding landscape or this beautiful abstract that so and so created. And it was created, you know, on this date.
Yeah, all the
Here's
info
the
is there.
digital signature, all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Untouched, by the way,
firmly
untouched.
believe that.
Yeah.
Hmm?
Untouched and incapable of, well, at least as far as we know,
Yeah.
incapable of manipulation in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Excellent.
pretty incredible.
Yeah, it is
Yeah. I
pretty
think
incredible how the
that's the
industry is.
future.
Yeah,
That's the
that's
future.
I definitely see it as well, and I think it'll be a lot quicker than we think. I think that, as you said, obviously there's a little bit of a mix in terms of reputation. There's also an element of education and knowing how to do it and knowing how it works, particularly and those that are maybe a little bit skeptic or not so familiar with crypto and the blockchain itself. But I
Mhm.
think also as the general crypto market grows as well, I mean, art, it's going to be really at the helm of a lot of this for sure.
One thing that I find fascinating is the whole digital frame space, where a lot of big collectors will put their collections into their digital frame, and they'll be able to have it displayed in their home on their digital frame. One of my collectors sent me a really great photograph of his living room with his giant digital frame with one of the images that he collected from me on it, and it was just fascinating to see.
Yeah,
It was really cool. Now, think back to when Bill Gates originally built his house in Seattle, and one of the big features of his house were digital frames all over that he could, the art could constantly change.
yeah.
And I think that that's something that is going to be part of the whole digital art revolution, the NFT revolution. I think that's something you should be thinking about with Plogix also is an art feed that people can subscribe to and bring right into their own homes onto their digital frames. And
Do you see a
they're
world? Yeah, I was just gonna go ahead. Sorry, Ed.
already they're already doing that with smart TVs,
Yeah,
where you can sign up for one of
Samsung, I
the
think, has one.
art galleries. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It's so I think that that's going to be something that happens as well. I know there's another blockchain, the Vitruvio blockchain that's been working on
yeah.
something like that, where they would be selling subscriptions to art, and artists would get, you know, so many pennies or whatever for every time their art gets shown through the digital scene. But I think there's a lot of potential there.
Do,
And
yeah, sorry, I
in
was just
doing
gonna. Go ahead, James. Yeah.
in doing that, it's creating another channel for exposing people's art. And I mean, that's kind of what it's all about. Art is not about trying to sell a piece of art to anybody who comes along. Art is about finding the right person who likes that style and targeting them.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that the whole digital world has made possible now. Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
and
I can totally resonate with that. And sorry to cut
yeah,
you off twice. It's because I really
no,
wanted to ask this question,
no
because a
problem.
lot of what you're saying is stuff that, I envisioned for the future,
Hmm.
and I think it's not really a question of if, but more of when.
Hmm.
So I wanted to
Hmm.
ask you, do you envision kind of a world in the future whereby everybody has, instead of pieces, well, not that they don't won't have actual canvases or pieces, because I think that always be there, but that they would, to complement that, they will have basically all sorts of different digital screens, and ultimately you would be paying basically either a licensing fee in the blockchain or something along those lines, where you would just be paying for a subscription to have kind of similar to kind of like a
Yeah.
Spotify kind of scenario, but
Yep.
instead,
Yep.
you'd be paying a subscription for art, because I think also not just even so the technology of the frames itself. I mean, I've seen, I think, several different technologies out there already that it's so precisely mimics the way an actual painting looks, but it's still on the screen.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's like it's a bit similar to like an e-ink, but at the same time, it's not, you don't get that shininess and stuff like that. But I've seen
Oh,
some
sure.
things that, I mean,
Hmm.
I mean, the question really is it going to get to a place where, it's going to be even hard to distinguish a real painting from a screen, right? So long as that you can touch it,
Yeah.
right? I think, because once you get to that
Absolutely.
level, then it's really a question of, well, you know, um, do I what's considered the original at that point, right? So, I mean, am I going to pay for each piece individually? So I think, I mean, do you see
Do you
something
want
in
to
my
own it? Do you want to own it or do you want to rent it?
exactly? Do you want to a little bit similar to music in a way, right? I'm not
Yeah.
saying we're
Yeah.
getting there soon, but I mean, it's definitely something to think about. I don't know what do you think about kind of what do you envision in
Absolutely. I
that?
think that's exactly where it's going, where people will be able to choose from their favorite artists, to create their own feeds. They'll be able to choose from, classical or abstract or whatever, depending on their moods. I think that one of the big areas for that is going to be doctors' offices, and dental offices, where they can provide, soothing images and soft, soothing music to reduce people's anxiety when they're there. You might find it used similarly in workspaces where people want to try to keep the production up and keep people focused, so they'll use art and music for that. Um, I was in an interesting art show last week in New York that I think it was really a fascinating thing. It was very simple but fascinating. The curators have a magazine called Damn Magazine, Digital Art Magazine. And what they did was they put out an open call for artists and they curated this wonderful feed and they went around New York with a projector and they projected these artworks on the walls of buildings and on places where you wouldn't expect to see art, on brick walls, on some of the bus stop uh, booths. It was really cool, and I thought that was a very unique use of art as well.
That's interesting. Yeah, we are on the cusp of kind of exploring things like that. I know that
Mhm.
there are cities where it's a little bit where you have a little bit of a stricter
Oh,
environment in terms of what you can and
yeah,
can advertise. London
sure.
obviously happens to be one a trickier one, but one that I know very well.
Mhm.
So yeah, I don't know if you heard the new one that we're doing with phone booths. You may or may not heard it, but
I have heard about that. Yeah.
yeah, we are obviously looking at these kinds of things, and like I said, I think that's a part of not just thinking outside of the box, but I think it's a new way of obviously showcasing art, and why not, right? I mean, I think there's
Yeah.
obviously a fine line between showcasing art and advertising, and what you're advertising, and what is just
Yeah.
as part of a deco, right? So I think.
Yeah.
And if you can be in the middle of that, why not? I think that's part of our aim.
Absolutely.
Um,
I've been wanting to get into one of your Waterloo Station or Piccadilly shows, um,
yeah, we
because
will do one more Piccadilly before the end of the year, if I'm not mistaken. I think it'll
oh
probably
great.
be October, November. I need to reconfirm with the team, but yeah, that was the first one was an amazing. I was actually there, so
Hmm.
and the screen we had was phenomenal because it was literally one to one opposite from the main big screen in Piccadilly.
Hmm.
So it was really, really interesting to be. For me, in particular, it was really interesting because, I studied in London and I walked that, Piccadilly Circus so many different times. So for me, to have my business there displaying all these different artists from all over the world, I think it was just
Very cool.
yeah, it was really, really cool. Same thing for Vegas. There's a picture actually, I think 5 or 6 years back, where we're
Hmm.
actually in Vegas with my by the time was my girlfriend, but now my wife.
Hmm.
And we have the Hollywood sign behind us with the screen. And then, I just said to myself, little did I know, a couple of years later, we would be showcasing their
Yeah.
artists and the business. So it's really amazing. And I think it creates that same vibe also for the artist, right? Because it's a memorable moment, a memorable thing that
Yeah.
you get to keep. And as you say, obviously creates credibility. So I think that's
Yeah.
a mix of
I'll
all
be
these
in the
things. Yeah.
I'll be in the Vegas showcase. I'm looking forward to that.
That would be great, actually. And are you going to be at any of our showcases, by the way, James? Presently or
Um, I'd really like to be at the one in London for the black car.
Okay, let us know for sure because I will definitely be there and I want to make sure I get some nice on-site interviews and I think
Cool.
obviously we've had
Yeah.
an amazing chat by the way. I think it's
Yeah.
and by the way I really mean it. I think it's one of the best and also I've really enjoyed it. The whole interview from start to finish a little bit so we covered so
From,
many different points that
from
is
gunshots to burned houses and
everything, the whole 9 yards.
yeah.
I really loved it
Yeah.
for sure.
Well,
I
I've
want to
enjoyed
ask
it
you,
too.
I want to ask you one last question, to kind of leave it out there with
Okay.
everything. If there is obviously you've done everything kind of in so many ways. Um, how do you see what's maybe one thing that you feel like you haven't done either as an artist or in general, or anything either related to art that has kind of shaped you that you've always wanted to do but haven't felt like um, you had the right opportunity or the right timing to do it.
Well, um, something that I'm going to do, I'm not sure if it's going to be this year or next year, is I want to do a coffee table book, but a really super high-end coffee table book with my art. Um, all the books that I've done so far have been touristy landscape kinds of books. They're not the super high-end um, art books. So that's one thing I'd like to do. Um, I'd like to get more into video and filmmaking. And yeah, I guess that's enough.
And
But
actually, just out of curiosity, I have one last thing. If I were to grab that, if you were to create that book, which I know you will, because obviously you've done so many things, and we would be more than happy to have a copy if you ever did. Um,
yeah,
if somebody's looking at that book, say 50, 60 years from now, and said, okay, that was James Truett, he was known for X, Y, Z,
Mhm.
and he was a person and as an artist known for this exceptional, whatever it may be. What would that be in your eyes? And do you feel like that would be kind of the same interpretation that a lot of your collectors have and the people that know you?
Well, um, look, I have a motto, and that's see beauty everywhere. And that motto comes from knowing that, look, my mother's favorite saying was every every cloud has a silver lining. And it's a mindset. I think it's really important for people to look for the good stuff, the positive, the beauty, and everything, even though you might have to dig, some dirt away from it to find it. And so, one of the overarching concepts for me that I hope comes through in my art is that concept of um, feeling and experiencing peace and tranquility and being able to look at something and really have your breath stop and for people to feel that emotion. Um, so if you're asking what I would want my epithet to be on my tombstone.
Not really. No, I don't want to put it in that sense. No, actually, even more so the contrary, to be fair, because it's more
Yeah,
of a
yeah,
it's more of the positive things that
yeah.
you would
I
rather
would want I want people to get that. I want them to feel that beauty that I felt, feel that serenity, that peace, that internal joy, um, even if it's just for a moment, because um, we really need that kind of inspiration in the world right now. I mean, as I mentioned before about my news career, um, people are bombarded with all these negative things and hate and bad feelings. And I'm telling you, that's a very small part of the world, but we're kind of brainwashed into thinking that that's the way everything is. And so it's that much more important to be able to say, hey, look at this beautiful thing, you know, take a moment, breathe, feel the peace, get recentered so that people get more perspective about, what's going on in their lives. I mean, it's a psychological thing where people who are more genuinely happy and have a more positive outlook, they live longer, live more fulfilled, find more opportunity, excel more in their careers and lives because they're operating with an opportunity consciousness.
Do you think the
And
world is waking up to that? Or
I,
do
I
you,
do, I
yeah,
do. Let me tell you something. And again, I'm 67 years old now. I have the pleasure of associating with a lot of young artists who, I got to tell you, I couldn't be more proud of these guys because they get it and they are awake to this and they do understand their own responsibility in the world. And to me, knowing that my generation will be leaving the world to these folks is really gratifying. I mean, it really means a lot.
yeah, that's really special. I think that's a great way to finalize things. And I totally resonate with that for sure. I think that if you were to kind of speak to a similar audience maybe a couple of decades prior to that, I think 100% it would be definitely different. You don't even have to go that far back, I would say. I think it's been an
Yeah.
exponential, and you feel it around. Not everybody, but even so, the people that maybe weren't, they're starting to, and I think that's and part of the tools like social media, if you use it in the right way, obviously help a lot of people kind of get that catalyst that they need.
And art is a big part of that. Art
Huge,
does lift people up.
huge.
And I mean, from if you're around a group of artists, the energy is very different. It's excited. It's
Yeah,
almost like teenagers in high school, excited about different things. I mean,
yeah.
that's great. And that's propels people on to do great things.
It's awesome. Yeah, that's why I like to hang around our artists as well. For sure. James, it's been really, really amazing. I think that just to finalize, I want to let you know that it's been one of the best, and I really mean it. And it's been one of the best interviews, and one of the most interesting, and the ones that I've enjoyed the most. Obviously, a lot of information, and I really enjoy working with you. Looking forward to obviously having you on a lot of our showcases in the near future, and maybe we can also do that. Several of those talks now that the Budapest stuff got canceled.
Yeah.
So
Well, yeah, I've enjoyed it too, and I appreciate it very much. So I thank you and all the folks there at Plogix.
thank you. Thanks.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Instagram to support our artists.